Is weird, odd, strange, or just plain bizarre is really your cup of tea? Then the Golden State Media Concepts Weird News Podcast will give you that fix. Can't believe it? Well, listen for yourself as we deliver the strangest news you definitely won't find on CNN or Fox. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Weird News Podcast.
Thank you for tuning in to the GSMC Weird News Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Brittany Lawrence. I am super pumped for today's show because the world has been super weird since we last talked. I get news updates on my phone, and since the government tracks my searches and listens to my thoughts, I'm looking at you targeted Facebook ads, I usually get a lot of fun headlines. But this week, I've got some that the headlines made me literally laugh out loud before even reading the story. So I'm excited to virtually hang out with you all and bask in the ridiculous and the odd. We're going to get going today with some equally odd and helpful news. How not to act during a bear attack, because there are some hard lines being drawn by the National Park Service, and we need to hear it. It also, unfortunately, is political season. And as much as our main two candidates don't instill any sense of fulfillment or joy in my heart, we do have the Libertarians. And after that, we'll slip right into zombie cicadas and beef sticks. And if you stick around until the end of the show, we'll be counting down the top 10 movies that are so bad, they're good. I haven't seen all of these, but I enjoyed reading about them and am super excited to start adding them to my list of must-sees. So let's get started. If you've listened to me talk for any amount of time now, you may have noticed that I have a very healthy fear of what I call death animals. I'm talking about animals that have it out for us. Sharks, bears, spiders, snakes. Animals you should just be leaving alone, but because humanity just can't actually leave well enough alone, we end up all in their space all the time. Well, since quarantine, people have been spending even more time outside and in nature, which is great, except for those of y'all spending the outside time in bear country. There have been so many recent encounters with the adorable from a distance deathmongers that the National Park Service has developed a list of some what not to do rules, which I appreciate. Their number one rule? Don't push your slow friends down to give you more time to get away. Which is good advice, really. I mean, in the end, the bear is still probably way faster than you, and after mauling your inevitably tasty friend, he's just going to come after you, so it's not the best plan. They followed that up with some more practical advice. If you come upon a stationary bear, move away slowly and sideways. This allows you to keep an eye on the bear and avoid tripping. Moving sideways is also non-threatening to bears. Do not run, which is easy for the National Park Service to say, but if the bear follows, stop and hold your ground. Like dogs, they will chase fleeing animals. Do not climb a tree. Both grizzlies and black bears can climb trees. Do not push down a slower friend, even if you think the friendship has run its course. Solid advice. I mean, we've all been on that outing with friends where that one person was there and you're like, oh, I'm way over them, and you just have to grin and bear it, but they would definitely be the first one you vote off the island or sacrifice to a ravenous bear. Or maybe that person is you. You know what? Be better. Further in their advice, they mention that bears really just want to be left alone, just like all of us, but that you should identify yourself by making noise so that the bear knows you are a human and not a prey animal. Help the bear recognize you as a human. We recommend using your voice because they mention that waving and showing off your opposable thumb actually doesn't mean much to a bear. Noted. The bear may come closer or stand on its hind legs to get a better look or smell. A standing bear is usually curious, not threatening. This one threw me a bit. I don't think any amount of good advice could just have me standing chest to chest with some massive bear. I'm going to just hope my ridiculously effective mom voice will scare them into submission. And in a moment of silence and solidarity, the National Park Service also publicly apologized to any friends who were brought on a hike as the bait or were sacrificed to save the group. You will be missed. Will they though? Will they really? Okay, it's still not cool to sacrifice Heather. You're actually better against the bear together. As far as better together goes, though, one presidential candidate had to wait to get together with any supporters until after she received a rabies vaccine after her recent encounter with a bat. She was literally bitten by a bat. I didn't even know that was a thing. How does one get close enough to a bat to get bitten by one? Aren't bats nocturnal? I'm not saying I'm a bat scientist because I'm sure that exists somewhere, but I've gone a long time without being bitten by a bat, so I guess I've got some experience. According to Politico, Jo Jorgensen, who was set to hit the campaign trail with visits to Louisiana and Mississippi on Saturday, announced she wouldn't be able to attend the first Saturday morning event after being bitten by a bat, but would make further scheduled campaign appearances later in the day. I will be getting a rabies vaccine as a precaution after having been bitten by a bat near the start of the campaign tour, Jorgensen tweeted late Friday. Jorgensen still spoke at a campaign event in Hattiesburg later on Saturday, furthering her #LetHerSpeak campaign she's been promoting to garner support for joining the presidential debate stage this fall. According to Jorgensen, we're on a 20-city, 16-day tour, so we're trying to hit all of the states because we want all Americans to have a real choice, said Jorgensen. If we just have Trump and Biden out there, they're not going to get any choice at all. It's just the same old thing. So we're out there talking to as many Americans as possible. Jorgensen says she is running for president to give people more choices of representation. Apparently maybe a superhero. There are a lot of people out there who are not libertarians or superheroes who are saying, you know what, 2 old rich white guys, also not superheroes. Like we keep hearing in the media, they're really not a choice. We want somebody who's one of us. I don't happen to be a superhero, but somebody who has lived under our laws to get out there and represent us, Jorgensen said. Many of her supporters posted random and hilarious quips on her social media outlets, decrying her for her lack of understanding of basic superhero lore. You're supposed to get bitten by a radioactive spider to gain superpowers. Batman wasn't bitten by a bat, one user said to Jorgensen, to which she replied, I'm not Batman. Touché. I'm all for the new DC movie in which a third-party political candidate has a secret identity who saves the world from a broken 2-party system during the day and puppies from storm drains at night. Or something. As of right now, Jorgensen is polling at about 2% of registered voters. I think that's because she hasn't made enough of a deal of the bat bite. There is definitely a good, solid part of the population who would be swayed at the possibility of a superhero for president. I'm not saying I'm a political genius, but I'm also saying I'm available. Now, these first 2 stories were pretty high on the weird and sufficiently awesome scale, but this next one might be my all-time favorite so far. Zombie cicadas. We got coronavirus, we got murder hornets, we got killer bears, and now we have zombie cicadas. In the craziest thing I have heard in a while, researchers have discovered a new population of cicadas that are being infected by a parasitic fungus that literally controls their mind and forces them to infect other insects. We're talking the Walking Dead of the insect world. What are they eating to cause such a disastrous occurrence? Mushrooms. According to CNN, these insects, dubbed zombie cicadas, are under the influence of Massapora, a psychedelic fungus which contains chemicals such as those found in hallucinogenic mushrooms. According to a new study published by PLOS Pathogens, they are literally having the worst trip ever. That's what's happening here. Once they find their victim, that is when things start to get weird and even a bit disturbing. After infecting its host, the fungus results in a disturbing display of B horror movie proportions, West Virginia University said in a press release. First, Massospora spores eat away at the cicada's genitals, butt, and abdomen. They are then replaced with fungal spores used to transmit the fungus to other cicadas. From there, this new fungal abdomen will slowly wear away like an eraser on a pencil, said study co-author Brian Lovett in the release. Y'all, I've never been afraid of zombies. There are enough things to be afraid of in this world. Fictional zombie stuff was not one of them. It's not fiction, guys. This is happening. This is real frickin' life. The infected cicadas, which were found in West Virginia by university researchers in June, are the third cicada population discovered to have been infected by Massospora, according to study co-author Matthew Casson. And in a full circle podcast of events, we talked about not long ago the fact that cicadas have either a 13 or 17-year life cycle and live underground until they emerge more than a decade later. So basically, studying how Massospora infects these species can be very difficult. We are living on top of a bunch of cicada zombies. I don't know why this isn't a bigger story, because I feel like it's just a matter of time before we hear about how cicadas recently found a taste for human flesh. You're welcome for that horror movie plotline, Hollywood. Call me. Also, basically a third of their body is replaced with this fungal tissue, which should kill them. But instead, infected cicadas continue to move around oblivious to their sickness. This is because the fungus manipulates the insect's behavior to keep the host alive, rather than killing them, to maximize spore dispersal. Which, I know I say a lot of things are terrifying, and rightfully so, but this may be the most actually terrifying thing I have ever talked about on the show. If one of our limbs were taken out, or if our stomach was slashed open, we would probably be incapacitated, Casson told CNN. But infected cicadas, despite the fact that a third of their body has fallen off, continue to go about their activities like mating and flying as if nothing happened. This is really, really unique for insect-killing fungi. Also, though the cicadas can't actually mate, the zombie bugs will still try because scientists believe that contact through mating is the fastest way to spread the virus. Also, infected males will pretend to be females by doing some crazy wing gyration thing, and once the males come over, they zap them with the virus bomb too. It's a whole thing, y'all. And when they are not spreading it sexually, they are literally becoming what actual scientists actually call salt shakers of death. When they fly around or walk on branches, they spread spores that way too, Casson said. We call them flying salt shakers of death because they basically spread the fungus the way salt would come out of a shaker that's tipped upside down. In an attempt to not make humanity feel like all is officially lost, Casson has laid out some assurances that infected cicadas are not a danger to humans, and at this time, researchers believe the fungus does not pose a serious risk to the overall cicada population. Let's put a pin in that and revisit zombie cicadas in 2021 and see how we feel about it then, shall we? In less panic-inducing, well, I take that back, in less necessary panic-inducing news, the Greensburg Police Department in Kansas was called out last Wednesday evening to a car which had been reported to have dynamite strapped to the dashboard. 3 responding agencies, the Greensburg Police Department, the Greensburg Fire Department, and the Kiowa County Sheriff's Office were dispatched to the car, which was parked in front of a business on West Kansas Avenue. However, when units arrived on the scene, they found that it was not in fact dynamite and was actually a beef stick, still in its wrapper. Wouldn't it be great if we found out that this pandemic wasn't really a pandemic at all, but really just a pack of Rolos someone left out that just resembled a deadly virus? That's not in fact the case, but I look forward to the conspiracy theories I hope to see now about the Rolo virus. Get on it, Internet. Local police informed the public that there were no explosives in the vehicle and there were not any threats to the public. The vehicle owner removed the suspicious beef stick from the dash. I can't imagine being the guy who gets pulled out from shopping to be questioned about my dashboard beef stick. Like, can you open that for me, please? Is it ticking? Any wires? No, just beef? Just a little snack for later, not a bomb? Cool. If you could just put it in your glove compartment, that would be great. Here's to that guy having one of the best stories to tell for basically the rest of his life. The kind of story where you say, did I ever tell you about the time I almost got arrested for a Slim Jim? And everyone groans because of course you have. Well, that's been a really strong start, y'all. When we come back, we'll keep it weird and get a bit darker as we save some kids from a burning building and meet a woman who carries her husband's bones through airport security, find a criminal who at the very least is taking the pandemic seriously, and the Brits announce a very important political retirement.
Check out the show built around the women of MMA. From the UFC to the extreme cage fighting, we got the fights covered.
Listen.
It's the Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast. The latest news of upcoming fights, discussions of previous matches. Join us as we talk to and about the biggest names in women's mixed martial arts. Past, present, and future. When it's the women's fight game, you know where to listen to. The Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast.
Welcome back. In our first segment, we talked about the do's and don'ts of bears attacks and tiptoed into politics, but only slightly. Really just surprised people are getting bit by bats. Realized zombies are not just a Walking Dead dream, but an insect reality. And that meat sticks look surprisingly like a terrorist threat. We've still got a lot to cover, but if you hang out till the end of the show, we'll also be counting down the top 10 movies that are so bad they are actually good. And here we go. We're going to start off with a story that has the potential for horror, but ends up pretty okay. There is a video out there right now of a ridiculously crazy rescue of two young brothers from an apartment fire. A crowd of people in France saved the terrified children as they jumped from the burning building. The brothers, aged 3 and 10, were rescued on Tuesday in southeastern France. In the footage, one boy is dropped from the ledge into the arms of the waiting crowd, and the other brother then sits on the edge, suddenly paralyzed by the fear. But the crowd waves him down, and he is eventually saved as well. Locals were praised by Grenoble's mayor, who called the rescue heroic. One of those who helped the children to safety was Athoumani Walid, who told BFM TV that he heard screams from outside his window when he saw the two children trapped. The eldest one took a lot of courage and a lot of confidence. He put his little brother first. We took him in and we said to the other one, "Come on, jump, it's your turn, jump," Walid said. Then he climbed up through the window, he let go, and then we got him again. None of them fell on the floor, no one's hurt, Walid added. We saved their lives, but they made the right decision to go for it. We had no choice. We had no way to go to them. They were the ones who came to us. They were the brave ones. They were the heroes. Which is 100% true. As wonderful as those people were for being there, for a child to make that split-second decision is a whole other thing, and I am super impressed and awed by not only the selflessness of the brother for getting his sibling out first, but also the bravery it took to make the jump themselves. Grenoble Mayor Eric Pioli wrote on Facebook, "I would like to congratulate the inhabitants of Villeneuve who made a heroic rescue of two children trapped in their burning apartment today." Police added, "Hand in hand, they allowed the two little ones to get out unharmed from this drama." In less happy news, an investigation into neglect has been launched against the boys' parents, as the children were alone in the apartment because their mother had gone grocery shopping and their father had left for work. State Prosecutor Eric Valiant said, according to BFM, the mother had been absent from around 11 a.m. when she went grocery shopping, and the dad had left for work around 11:30. At first glance, the mum should have returned before the departure of the husband, but was a bit late. The children were not allowed to be left alone, added Valiant. Luckily, no one was seriously harmed in the fire that started in the living room of the apartment. The source has yet to be determined. A total of 14 people were intoxicated by smoke fumes, and 2 firefighters were mildly injured. Moving on from frightening to creepy, authorities at Munich airport in Germany detained a 74-year-old Armenian woman after human bones were found in her luggage, German federal police said Tuesday. I've been stopped and detained and questioned and nearly tackled because I tried to hand my boyfriend at the time the sunglasses I was wearing as I was taken for the randomized pat-down. Apparently they take that "has anyone else touched your luggage" thing very seriously nowadays. But I feel like human remains would be a pretty difficult thing to slip through unnoticed. Airport officials found the human remains after examining the contents of a wooden box in the woman's luggage. They then called in customs officers, a doctor, and a public prosecutor for further questioning. What a weird day someone just had, minding your own business, finding all the drugs people try to smuggle overseas, and generally just your normal amount of misery as an airline employee, and then, bam, human remains. You don't even know what to do with that info because even if it was covered in some class at some time, you don't remember it. Plus, she is mid-70s and probably looks just like their own dear Nan, and they don't want to accuse her of anything too dastardly, but she's carrying around bones and the whole thing would just be super weird. Police interrogations revealed that the woman was attempting to fly the bones of her deceased husband from her home in Greece to be laid to rest in their native Armenia, with flight stopovers in Munich and Kiev before reaching the destination. The woman was accompanied by her 52-year-old daughter, so the daughter didn't think anything was super weird about the whole transference of body either, and didn't think it might be necessary to let someone know beforehand because here's the thing. Even if something like that is legal, which we find out that apparently it actually is, you have to know you are going to get stopped for bones. Like, no one is just going to let you skip right on an airplane with human remains, so a phone call would probably have been your best bet. Unless the daughter didn't know about the bones. That's not something they really discuss. I'm really hoping she didn't know, to be honest, so she's just putting her shoes back on, and the mom calls back, "Hey, they found Dad!" And everything just gets super awkward for a long while. Upon further investigation, documents indicated that the woman's husband had died in 2008 and was buried near their home in Thessaloniki, and that the transfer of human remains was lawful and they were actually allowed to continue on their way. I'm assuming storing the remains of the patriarch in the overhead compartment. All I could think about as I finished this story is hitting some turbulence and Dad falling out on some unsuspecting passenger. Seems they made it to their destination, however, and Pop's last wishes to be laid to rest in his home country was fulfilled. So, there's that. From horrific to creepy and now to just wacky, one Iowa man has been linked to a string of robberies, but he's not stealing money or valuables. He's stealing something much more valuable in today's uncertain times: hand sanitizer. The Sioux City Police Department arrested 39-year-old suspect Mark Gray after police were called to 3 reports of burglaries, which took place in the span of a few hours. On August 4th, police were called to a report of a burglary at the Counseling and Support Services building after a suspect broke a window to gain entry inside. But no one could identify anything straight away that was missing. A little over 3 hours later, the department responded to a report of a broken window at Security National Bank. The window would allow access to the lobby. This time, however, they realized that something had in fact been taken. This time, the bank's ready supply of hand sanitizer. Sioux City Police Department said in a statement that demand for hand sanitizer has surged in recent months as a result of the coronavirus outbreak. Just over 30 minutes later, officers responded to yet another burglary at Trattoria Fresco restaurant. This time, when officers responded, they actually located the suspect still inside the building. Newsweek reports that Gray of Sioux City was arrested on suspicion of burglarizing all 3 businesses. He was booked into the Woodbury County Jail on 3 counts of third-degree burglary. It has not been released whether Gray had stolen anything else other than the hand sanitizer. And in further hand sanitizer news, apparently the CDC has had to issue a statement where it asks people to stop ingesting hand sanitizer to protect themselves from coronavirus. It may surprise some of you, but straight up swallowing chemicals doesn't help, and it will in fact kill you, the CDC says in much more sciencey words. In a Wednesday statement, the CDC implored people not to ingest alcohol-based hand sanitizers, as well as to avoid all use of any containing methanol. The CDC noted 15 recent cases of people who drank hand sanitizer and were hospitalized with methanol poisoning. The cases between May 1st and June 30th, 2020, flagged by the CDC, were reported in Arizona and New Mexico. In the most severe cases, 4 patients died, and 3 were discharged with visual impairment, the CDC said. In a statement I'm sure many people never thought they would have to make, the CDC reported, alcohol-based hand sanitizer products should never be ingested, the report stated. In patients with compatible signs and symptoms, or after having swallowed hand sanitizer, prompt evaluation for methanol poisoning is required. In mid-June, the Food and Drug Administration, which approves which hand sanitizers are safe to use, warned consumers of a sharp increase in hand sanitizers that are labeled to contain ethanol, also known as ethyl alcohol, but that have tested positive for methanol contamination. The administration also listed hand sanitizers and manufacturers to avoid. Basically, the 2 things you should 100% not do right now. Number 1, don't steal hand sanitizer. Number 2, don't drink it. Whether stolen or purchased, both are poisonous. You're welcome. We're going to close out this weird segment with something still weird but also adorable. In what is absolutely the cutest political appointment, the British Foreign Office's chief mouser Palmerston is retiring. His plan is to spend more time relaxing away from the limelight. In a letter addressed to Sir Simon MacDonald, Permanent Undersecretary of the Foreign and Commonwealth Office, and that was posted to Palmerston's official Twitter account, it was announced that the cat would be retiring from hunting mice at the Foreign Office's headquarters in London. Palmerston, whose namesake is the 2-time Prime Minister Viscount Palmerston, was adopted from Battersea Dogs and Cats Home by the Foreign Office in 2016 and quickly gained notoriety for catching mice and canoodling with visiting diplomats. Palmerston has also had a long-standing feud with Larry, the Prime Minister's cat, who is also charged with catching mice, but is often reported to fall down on his job quite a bit, and has been known to let mice escape with their lives on one too many occasions. Palmerston began putting pressure on the Prime Minister's mouser after a report under Freedom of Information laws, which stated he killed at least 27 mice since coming to the office. The expected number is thought to actually be higher, as those were only reported sightings, and the report also further stated that Palmerston is exclusively fed Whiskas cat food, and the bills for his care are paid voluntarily by office staff. So, file that under important government documents I didn't know existed. The letter announcing Palmerston's retirement, apparently written by the cat himself, said the feline is retiring to live with a family in the British countryside. Although I am ending my formal role here, I will always be an ambassador for the UK and the new Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office, the letter reads. Palmerston was praised for his ever-faithful service to the Crown by the Foreign Office in a Twitter post that reads, "We'll all miss him awfully, but wish him a perfect retirement." Apparently, British official mousers are a real thing and fairly common. There is also Gladstone, the Treasury cat, who is known for his stylish collection of bow ties, and Evie and Aussie, the Cabinet Office cats. I have no idea why we can't have things like this. Why we can't employ animals to make the government more palatable. Obama didn't give Bo nearly enough responsibility or limelight. And on that note, we'll head to break, and when we come back, we'll figure out if a message in a bottle really works, and if so, how far can it conceivably go? Meet the first female Major League coach, and Caesar the no-drama llama, because baseball and llamas are literally 2 of my most favorite things, and close it all out with balloon animals.
Are you tired of the same old news? Are you sick of the seemingly endless political spin and negativity? The GSMC America's Still Beautiful podcast is a weekly news podcast covering all the top positive and uplifting news stories. We cover stories that will inspire, uplift, and remind you of the good in the world. Tune into the Golden State Media Concepts America's Still Beautiful podcast to get all the great and positive news stories of today. Download the GSMC America's Still Beautiful podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
Welcome back. In our last segment, children were saved, bones were dug up and put through airport security, hand sanitizer was stolen, and cats were employed and subsequently retired. And we've still got some sufficiently odd stories left to round out the show today. We'll start out in North Carolina and end in Morocco, as that 4,000 miles is how far a young girl's message in a bottle traveled after being tossed in the Atlantic Ocean and being plucked out by a Moroccan fisherman. Vivian Byerly, then a third grader in Susan Ferguson's Greensboro Day School class, wrote the message in April 2019 as part of a class assignment. This is cute, it really is, but why is throwing stuff into the ocean still a thing? I get it, I'm being that guy, but it still seems really counterproductive to throw literal trash into the ocean. But I digress, back to sweet messages from a child. Byerly and her classmates each wrote their own messages in bottles, and they included their teacher's email address and the school's address. After the kids wrote their messages, they were then thrown into the Atlantic Ocean in May of last year. One of the bottles was found by a fishing boat not long after entering the water, but there was no word from any of the others until Sunday, when Ferguson received an email. The email from a Moroccan fisherman said Byerly's bottle had been found on White Beach near Guelmim, Morocco. The message included photos of the bottle and the fisherman who found it, along with his nephew who translated the message for his uncle. Byerly has been able to respond to the email and has received further information about the discovery. Here's what I don't understand, though. I mean, there was probably at least 20 kids in that class, right? So there's at least 18 or so bottles still just lounging around in the ocean out there? I'm assuming they are probably throwing glass bottles, which, I mean, granted is arguably better than plastic, but scientists still think it's bad form. Sharp edges are a hazard to wildlife, and it can take years before they are ground down into beach glass. It's still throwing garbage into the environment, and it has no place there, said Tony Walker, an assistant professor at the School for Resource and Environmental Studies at Dalhousie University in Halifax. Besides, the whole message in a bottle routine is outdated. According to Walker, there are new and much more ocean-friendly ways to send messages out into the waves. He pointed to a research project out of the University of Oldenburg in Germany that is sending out wooden blocks with messages embossed on them in a non-toxic ink. The project's goal is to have people report back where they found the blocks, in an effort to understand how plastics travel around oceans. Pollution is literally such an issue that people are sending out non-pollutants to figure out how quickly pollutants travel. Wooden blocks ultimately will degrade, so they don't have a legacy pollution impact on the environment, said Walker. So, yeah, the fact that the bottle got so far was neat, and I'm glad the kid got her cool email, but let's be better and stop throwing stuff in the ocean for the heck of it. I'll get off my soapbox for a minute, though. Let's talk about one of my most favorite things in the world to talk about: baseball. As a woman and a mom of daughters, I also like to talk about women doing cool stuff. So with that in mind, let's talk about San Francisco Giants coach Alyssa Nakken, as she became the first female coach to take the field during a Major League Baseball game. Nakken got her first experience on the field when she entered as first base coach during the late innings of the team's exhibition game against the Oakland A's. She joined the organization in 2014 as an intern and then became the first female coach on staff and in the league's history. The Giants announced the hiring of Nakken on January 16th as an assistant coach as part of Gabe Kapler's staff. Nakken, a four-time academic All-American softball player for Sacramento State, is currently responsible for developing, producing, and directing a number of the organization's health and wellness initiatives and events, including coordinating the Giant Race Series. When she joined the organization in 2014 as an intern in the baseball operations department, she worked on a variety of special projects related to the amateur draft, international operations, and player development. For me, it is super cool just to have a woman be involved in the boys' club that is professional sports. And to be a relatively non-news event is also really encouraging. It also doesn't seem like one of those hires to make headlines or taking one for the team and hiring a girl for publicity. Nakken seems uniquely qualified for her role. Prior to joining the Giants, Nakken served as the Chief Information Officer for the University of San Francisco baseball team. She played first base for the Sacramento State Hornets from 2009 to 2012 and was a 3-time All-Conference selection, 4-time Academic All-American, 4-time Commissioner's Honor Roll member, and the 2012 Conference Scholar Athlete of the Year. Nacken started 184 games for the Hornets and was a career .304 hitter, ranking among the program's top 6 players in 6 different Division I area categories, including home runs, 19. Her 1,265 putouts are the most in school history, and she also ranks 3rd with 115 runs scored. So, she may know a thing or two about baseball, since she's pretty good at swinging a bat. In an article by the New York Post, it's noted that the number of female coaches in major sports has grown exponentially in recent years, with 7 women having worked as full-time assistants in the NFL, including Katie Sowers, who, in February, as an assistant offensive coach for the San Francisco 49ers, became the first woman to coach in a Super Bowl. Nearly a third of NBA teams have hired women as assistant coaches, and Spurs assistant Becky Hammon is regularly mentioned as a head coaching candidate. With Nacken as MLB's first woman to make it on the field, and teams such as the Yankees and Cubs hiring hitting coaches Rachel Balkovec and Rachel Holden, respectively, it's not likely that she will be the last. Anytime the narrative can be furthered that my daughters can do literally anything they want to, I'm all for it. So here's to you, ladies in sports. Keep being awesome. Now let's jump to another one of my most favorite things in the world, llamas. Is there anyone who doesn't just love them, though? I mean, here's the thing. Have you ever actually seen one? They are one of the goofiest looking things. They are basically a smaller, fuzzy giraffe. The funky teeth, the fur, the silly sounds they make, the slow, lumbering walk. They are just wonderful and silly, and I love them. And apparently, I'm not alone. Enter Caesar the no-drama llama. No matter what side of the fence you are on, everyone is aware of the civil unrest in the world right now. Protests and violence are a social norm at the moment. Caesar is a new kind of activist, though. He has attended more than 10 Black Lives Matter protests and 50 marches for other causes. His role is slightly different, though, than many of the people attending the marches and protests. No matter where you stand on the issues, Caesar is there to make sure you can have a good, solid cuddle when emotions start to charge. Caesar is a retired show llama who loves to offer emotional support hugs and a quick snuggle when things start to heat up, and protesters could use a soothing moment. Larry McCool, Caesar's owner, has been taking the 6-year-old Argentine Grand Champion show llama to various protests and marches around the country for years, allowing Caesar to melt the hearts of many with his calm presence and perfectly groomed coat. The Washington Post reported. And he's not lying about the perfectly groomed coat. The llama has better hair than me. Though 350-pound Caesar stands tall at 5 feet and 8 inches, people are constantly drawn to the sweet llama for a quick pet and picture. So much so that attendees will even wait in line for just a second with the beloved animal. I don't care how big, how staunch, how intense that somebody is. It could be a big marcher, someone in total riot gear, and he will come up and give Caesar a big hug, McCool told the Post. It's all I can do to just keep him from snuggling. Guys, the llama just wants to snuggle. It's a literal dream come true for me. At a recent protest in Portland, McCool said protesters would take breaks from the intense event to have a moment of peace with Caesar. They'll be clapping, chanting, stomping, and all of a sudden I'll get up with Caesar, and the next thing I know, everyone will just be banding around him, he said. Caesar brings calm and diffuses tension within these extremely volatile situations, because everyone loves him as much as he loves everyone. I recently talked about a story in which scientists were looking at llamas' antibodies to help fight COVID, and now they're being used to help bring peace to volatile situations, and my heart simply cannot take it. It's too pure. Since transitioning Caesar into a therapy animal after purchasing him at the Oregon State Fair in 2015, McCool also has brought Caesar to many social and charity functions. He brings Caesar to retirement homes to visit shut-ins outside of their windows. He's a magical creature, McCool said, comparing Caesar's disposition to that of a dog. I wish I could take some credit for him, but he's developed it all on his own. I've been his tutor and his guide, but sometimes I'm the one following him. I've had people just stand there for 20 to 30 seconds, a minute even, just with their arms wrapped around him with tears and say, man, did I need that today, McCool told Insider. Maybe they're going to have a better day because of a llama hug, he added. Who would have thought a llama could bring this much joy? Me. I could have thought that. What the world needs right now, guys, is just more llamas. I've said it before, and I truly believe it. Animals are a gift. God knew humanity would need some sort of way to soften the noise of a broken world. And what better way than to hunker down and snuggle with a cat, dog, rabbit, or a massive, fuzzy llama. We're going to close out the weird news portion of the show today with a feel-good story out of Milwaukee, where an injured clown is fighting his way back to health by unconventional therapy means. 73-year-old Ron Pritchard wound up in the Spinal Cord Injury Center at the Milwaukee VA Medical Center in early June after a moped accident. The crash left him with a spinal cord injury and nerve damage. When I got here, I walked like Frankenstein's monster. Clop, 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 he said, adding that his right hand was curled and stiff. Knowing his background as a clown, physical therapist Annette Greffig recommended that Pritchard make balloon animals as part of his rehabilitation. Though unconventional, it's actually a perfect routine for Pritchard, as for more than 40 years he has moonlighted in the Milwaukee area as Bippy the Clown. I love kids, and I love to entertain, Pritchard said of why he became a clown. It was something I started doing in 1973 to 74 to make a little extra money. Now his dexterity has improved exponentially, as for the past 2 months he has been creating dogs, birds, and all manner of animals out of balloons. We knew that Ron was Bippy the Clown, and we knew he could make balloon animals, and thought it would be a really good intervention that was fun and about him, Greffig said during a recent session. Pritchard joked with Greffig while working with the balloons, while Greffig goaded him to stand unassisted as long as possible while making the animals. While tying off some of the balloons was a little tricky, Pritchard proved he still has what it takes to keep his clown credentials, creating a balloon dog he gave to physical therapist Johnny Kuhn expressly for Kuhn's daughter. We're working on his hand function and his standing balance. This combines both of those things, Greffig said, noting that twisting the balloons works Pritchard's fine motor skills. Pritchard said the exercises have worked wonders. Physical therapists are pretty amazing people. You really have to get creative to figure out the best way to get people moving again. My youngest daughter has Down syndrome, and her physical therapist has been such a joy. My daughter is brilliant and amazing and honestly as stubborn as a mule. So the lengths her therapist has to go through to get her to do things she is entirely capable of doing is comical, but has worked for my daughter. Creativity abounds in the world of physical therapy, and it's wonderful. For Pritchard, he credits Grifford for his quick road to recovery. This gets my fingers going. It's really great to have the dexterity to be able to do this again, he said, noting that after the accident his left hand was fine, but his right hand was iffy. I'm improving a lot thanks to this young lady, Pritchard said, pointing to Greffig, who said Pritchard has made great progress and will likely be back home by early August. Ron is fun to work with, Greffig said. He works very hard, and I ask a lot of him. I think we make a good team. Well, we sufficiently went round the world in recent weird news. I appreciate you guys taking the ride with me. When we come back, we'll count down the top 10 movies that are so bad they're good. Bad and weird. Always weird.
The GSMC Life and Happiness podcast takes you on a journey of exploration. We'll discuss tried and true methods alongside the latest trends of how to best live your life to its fullest and happiest. From psychology to meditation, science to self-help books, the GSMC Life and Happiness podcast will help you to discover what makes you happy and how you can live life being the best you possible. Download the GSMC Life and Happiness podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
And we're back. Our last segment followed the tired routine of messages in a bottle to Morocco, the ever-increasing presence of women in sports, no drama llamas, and clown therapy. We'll finish out the show with some movie talk. I love movies, and was excited to find this list-by-list verse of what they consider the top 10 worst good movies. I haven't seen all of them, but they are now on my must-watch list. Let's get going. Number 10, The Giant Claw. This 1957 clunker is a bad classic for one reason and one reason only. The completely ludicrous bird puppet used as the monster. Probably the absolute worst monster ever to appear on film. Apparently, due to budget constraints, after the actors were done shooting, the film was sent to Mexico for the special effects. At very little cost and without oversight by the director or producers. When they got the footage back, they were completely aghast, but had no choice to release the film as is. The resulting film has people reciting serious dialogue about a horrifying creature, then being frightened out of their skulls by this giant, flying, misshapen goose, or something out of a sick kid's show with googly eyes and a hairy feather coming out of its head. One bonus is that it features Mara Corday, who starred in a number of these giant beast flicks in the 50s. Favorite scene? Anytime the giant claw is on the screen. Other laughably bad monster movies: Attack of the Giant Leeches, A Guy in a Trash Bag, The Killer Shrews, Dogs Wearing Shag Carpets, The Crawling Eye, A Giant Crawling Eyeball, CHUD, Sewer Creatures, The Monolith Monsters, Rocks, Sting of Death, A Guy Becomes Part Jellyfish, and Attack of the 50-Foot Woman. Number 9. Attack of the Killer Tomatoes. Made as a parody of horror flicks in 1978, this film is a parody in itself. It never takes itself very seriously and has a lot of very funny moments, but there's no denying the ineptitude of everyone involved in it. Of course, how do you make a good movie about the world being attacked by killer mutant tomatoes? So why make it in the first place? Because it's fun. Favorite scene? The underwater sequence as tomatoes attack swimmer a la Jaws. Other laughably bad killer tomato movies: Return of the Killer Tomatoes, featuring a young George Clooney, and Killer Tomatoes Strike Back, and Killer Tomatoes Eat France. Number 8. Troll 2. Released 20 years ago, this film is now gaining a cult following as one of the worst movies ever made. In fact, a new documentary called Best Worst Movie centers around one of the actors who is now a dentist, and the following Troll 2 has amassed. This movie is so reprehensibly bad. It is also too much to sit through, but with the right frame of mind, it's actually quite enjoyably awful. The plot revolves around little evil trolls taking over a small town because no one there knows how to deliver a line or something like that. Favorite scene? A nerdy guy delivers a ridiculous line with painful gusto. "They're eating her! And then they're going to eat me. Oh my God!" Clever. Other laughably bad sequels: Ghoulies 2, Return to Oz, Grease 2, embarrassingly funny and bad, Jaws, The Revenge. Number 7. Santa Claus Conquers the Martians. This epic from 1964 is on many worst movies of all time lists, and for good reason. It's bad, but it's also so much fun on many levels, starting out with the bubblegum pop theme song, to the use of Whammo air blaster guns as Martian weapons, to the sight of a young Pia Zadora as a Martian girl. The story revolves around said Martian children being depressed that kids on Earth get to celebrate Christmas and they don't. The solution is to kidnap Santa and bring him to Mars. Much hilarity and many hijinks ensue. Of course, all works out in the end, and both Mars and Earth get to celebrate the holiday. Favorite scene? The attack of the man in a polar bear costume, complete with zipper up the back. Other laughable holiday movies: Santa Claus, a creepy Mexican import, Jingle All the Way, Arnold trying to get the ungettable toy, but bad fun, Ernest Saves Christmas, bad, but who can hate Ernest? Number 6. Death Race 2000. The term schlock started being used to describe films back in the 50s or so. It means something cheap, shoddy, or inferior. And it's been used to describe this 1975 film from infamously schlocky director-actor Paul Bartel, Lust in the Dust, Eating Raoul. The premise is that in the future there will be a cross-country car race in which pedestrians can be run down for extra points. The movie stars David Carradine and Sylvester Stallone, a year before the release of Rocky, It's so over the top that the overacting works. The cars are very cool, and there is plenty of action. Favorite scene? Nurses at a senior citizens' home wheel the old folks out of the middle of the highway in wheelchairs for the drivers to plow through. Yeehaw. Other laughably bad films with dystopian versions of the future: Rollerball, Original, The Running Man, and Waterworld. Number 5, The Blob. A B-movie is one that was made to follow a main feature, usually produced on a smaller budget with lesser-known talent and little studio support. The Blob may be one of the biggest B-movies of the 50s, if only because it's still an all-time crowd-pleaser, and it featured Steve McQueen in his first role. It's the simple story of a boy takes girl to make-out point, meteor carrying a flesh-eating blob lands on Earth, and teens try to convince adults that there's danger afoot. The famous running out of the theater scene is reenacted every year during Blob Fest in Phoenixville, Pennsylvania, where the film was mostly shot. The theater is still intact. There are so many memorable scenes in this one, but even Steve McQueen has a hard time delivering some of his putrid lines. Favorite scene? Watch some of the people running out of the theater. They seem to be having a great time. One woman actually falls and no one helps her up. Other laughably bad teens in danger films: Night of the Creeps, Idle Hands, I Was a Teenage Werewolf, Teenagers from Outer Space. Number 4, Roadhouse. This movie has become known as one of the best camp classics ever. This movie has something for everyone. Lots of brutal, bloody, fist-fighting, nudity, Southern rock soundtrack, guns, knives, and explosions. Released in 1989, the film was a decent box office hit, but has now found its home as a cult favorite. The story is simple. Swayze's character is a tough bouncer hired to take care of a bar when he comes up against some evil guys who want to fight and stuff. It really doesn't matter. This is pure campy fun that is perfect to make fun of. Favorite line? Pain don't hurt. Other laughably bad fight films: They Live, any Billy Jack sequel, Dolomite. Number 3, Robot Monster. In 1953, sci-fi movies were all the rage. Films like War of the Worlds or Invaders from Mars played to people's fears of aliens from outer space, while really being metaphors for the red menace that everyone in America dreaded. Among the lesser films of this genre would be Robot Monster. Director Phil Tucker put a guy in a gorilla suit and a diving helmet, went out to Bronson Canyon in California, the site of many Western film and TV shoots, and cobbled together the most bizarre tale of alien invasion ever. I don't want to get into the plot and spoil it for you, but there are row men, a gorgeous love interest, a hunky scientist, some inserted stock footage of lizards in dinosaur costumes battling it out, flying saucers on sticks, and a couple of annoying kids. It's a blast. Favorite scene? The family decides it would be a good idea to picnic in the middle of a hot, rocky canyon and take a nap under the blistering sun. Other laughably bad alien invasion movies: Little Shop of Horrors, the original version, not the fun musical, Killer Clowns from Outer Space, Monster A-Go-Go. Number 2, Manos, The Hand of Fate. The brainchild of then fertilizer salesman Harold P. Warren in 1966, it's definitely bad. The film had practically disappeared until the geniuses at Mystery Science Theater 3000 found it and lampooned it, which is probably the best way to watch it. The plot revolves around a family's road trip that goes horribly wrong when they wind up in a mysterious ranch that happens to be some sort of devil-worshipping pagan cult. The real star is Torgo, a brainless manservant of the Master, who for some reason has giant swollen knees. Yeah, giant knees. The film was shot on a handheld camera that needed winding every so often, so no shot lasts longer than 32 seconds or so. And since it was shot without sound, the voices were all dubbed, mostly by only 2 or 3 people, so everyone sounds vaguely alike. It may be painful to sit through, but with a bunch of people and a good sense of humor, this is a bucket of fun. Favorite scene? The Master sentences Torgo to die. 2 of the Master's wives claw at Torgo to kill him, then his hand falls off in a fire. Other laughably bad similar films? Well, nothing. Nothing really compares to this. And number 1, Plan 9 from Outer Space. The true granddaddy of entertaining, inept filmmaking, this Golden Turkey winner is a true classic. Immortalized by Tim Burton in the great film Ed Wood, this was to be the director's magnum opus. But instead, it's top-notch terrible. I find it incredibly watchable, if only to laugh at the passionate way some of these actors deliver their lines. The story of aliens making the dead rise to help stop the Earth from discovering solarbenite has all of the makings of a sci-fi horror epic. But alas, that would never be. Instead, we get shots that switch from day to night and back again, an obvious stand-in for Bela Lugosi, who died long before actual shooting began and appears only from footage Wood shot earlier, and sets right out of someone's basement. A shower curtain is the cockpit door on a plane, tombstones fall over when someone trips over the fake grass, and alien spacecrafts hung on wires wobble over shots of Hollywood. This is great stuff, and will truly be enjoyed with tongue firmly planted in cheek. And on that weird note, we've reached the end of the show today. Thank you for hanging around and weirding out with me, and as always, thank you for listening to the GSMC Weird News Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I would like to ask that you please remember to subscribe to the show and write a nice review. That really helps us. Also, if you can, please follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Thank you, and have a good night. Be good to each other.